All right, welcome to Beyond Budgeting, Cash Flow Management for Busy Families. This is me. I'm Emily Goldman, and in my professional life, there we go, I'm a financial planner, and I'm passionate about creating financial freedom for busy families. And what that means to me is freedom from anxiety, from worry that build up if we don't plan or if we just don't even know the next step to take. In my personal life, I'm a mom, and I know how challenging it can be to manage the busy family schedule, and on top of that, find some time and energy to focus on the family finances. So I commend you for taking the time today. These are my 3 kids and my top 3 reasons for my personal passion in financial freedom for busy families, certainly working on it for myself as well as for my clients. We see cash flow as providing a link between life conversations and financial conversations. We believe cash flow conversations can help you focus your financial resources on your most important life priorities, goals, and dreams. And I think that'll become more clear as we get more into first step here. So first off, I hope, again, everyone had a chance to print this off. I sent it in at least one of the confirm emails from this morning. If you don't have it, you can just grab a piece of paper and make your own little circle. So what we're going to do before we start talking about cash flow, I just like to put this conversation in the context of your own life. This is interactive again, so you need something to write with and your wheel of life that you printed out or a piece of paper. Just sketch that circle there. Okay. Back that. Okay, so the idea here is to place a dot on each spoke that indicates your level of satisfaction in that facet of life. So the scale is 0 to 10. 0 is at the center, completely unsatisfied, and 10 is at the outer rim, completely satisfied. So what you want to do is, again, just take a few minutes to, again, sort of top of mind without getting too much into analysis, but what's your level of satisfaction in each area of life, and put, again, a little dot on each spoke. And then what you can do is connect the dots to create your own life wheel. And then it gives you a nice visual. Is the wheel round or does it have flat spots? Is it deflated or full? And what does this exercise tell you about your life? Is it balanced or are there areas that need attention? And in what areas would you want to focus on having more satisfaction in your life? So take one facet, perhaps one that's most important to you or one that you feel needs the most attention, and just jot down some thoughts, again, just kind of top of mind, just for a couple minutes, not even 1 minute here, what you could do to improve this facet of your life. So thinking big, anything goes, not editing yourself or your thoughts, just writing down all of your ideas. So take just a few moments for that. Again, this is going to help us put a little more context around our cash flow conversation. So again, just selecting one, jotting down some ideas. What possible actions you could take to improve that facet of life. And so now you have some possible goals to improve that facet of your life, to improve a facet of your life that's important to you. And now let's think about that in terms of cash flow. Jumping off here into how most households manage money. This is typically how most people have their accounts set up and how they manage their household income. So there's one big bucket, and all the income comes into it, and all the expenses are paid from it. And these expenses can range from fixed expenses like mortgage payment, utility bills, to things that vary more like groceries, gas, and dining out. And having all these transactions going on at once is what makes it really difficult to know when and where the money is coming and going. And this is really one of the top issues that my clients tell me is we live here in the Bay Area, we feel like we have a good income, and at the end of the day, we're not really sure where our money is going and we're not sure we're getting ahead. So in addition, all the different ways of completing the transactions. So we're doing credit cards, we're doing checks, automatic deposit and withdrawal. This is all convenient, but it might also increase the complexity of understanding the flow of our money in and out of our lives. Imagine instead that we have 3 buckets of money rather than just one, and the money in each bucket is for a specific purpose. Our blue bucket, the static bucket, will hold money that will pay for things we have purchased in the past or agreed to pay for in the past. This could range from mortgage payments to cell phone bills. In other words, the money in this bucket covers the things we've made a commitment to pay for typically on a monthly basis. Could be also yearly commitments like property tax or insurance premiums. And then in the second bucket, this yellow control bucket, this holds money to help us pay for things we purchase every week, but often vary in cost. With this money, we would pay for anything from groceries to eating out to recreation. For my clients, typically the 3 main categories: gas, groceries, and eating out. The super regular stuff that happens every week. And finally, the third bucket is the orange dynamic bucket. This holds the money we'll use for all that we'll pay for in the future. This could range from an emergency fund to dream vacation. And so this is where sort of the goal piece comes in typically. Once we know we have our static expenses managed, that we can kind of set aside control bucket, we can set that intentionally for how much we'd like to spend every week. And then hopefully we have something left. And if not, we work on some strategies for that. But to the extent we have additional funds, we're thinking about what is this money for? What do we want to save for in terms of our future needs and wants? And this is where we can really have a lot more fun thinking about the maybe things we've wanted to do that we just haven't done. Maybe we're trying to save for a down payment on a house or a vacation that we'd really like to take. This is the bucket where we would play with those goals and dreams. In short, our static bucket is for past commitments. Control bucket is for present day choices, and the dynamic bucket is for future needs and wants. Here are some important things to remember about the static bucket. The money in this bucket is for things you committed to pay for in the past. Because of this prior commitment, your payments are quite predictable. You know how much money you need to pay each month or quarter, and there are no big surprises. The critical part to understanding and taking control of your cash flow is understanding these fixed expenses and how much in total it takes to operate your household on a monthly basis. So looking more specifically at what sorts of things we would pay for with money in this bucket, basically all monthly commitments. One of these items would be purchases you decided to make in the past, such as a house on which you have a mortgage or a car on which you have a loan, as well as any accrued credit card debt that you're working on paying down. However, it does not include any new credit card purchases, only debt that has been accrued in the past. Money here in this bucket also pays for ongoing services, membership fees or cell phone bills, health club dues, even less frequent payments, like we mentioned, insurance premiums and taxes. And then also some people like to put in this bucket donations. So if you have a regular monthly donation, a fixed annual commitment, maybe that you're making on a regular basis, you would put that in this bucket as well. It's important to remember that because the weekly expenses you pay for with the money in your control bucket typically vary, it's hard to monitor where the money's going and how much is being spent. So what we do here is really what makes this system different than most budgeting systems. What you want to do is decide on an amount ahead of time and fund this bucket at the beginning of your weekly time frame. So you put it in each week and then you draw it down. Every week you're drawing it down, filling it up, drawing it down. And this way, if you just know what's in this bucket, which is this, I'm going to get into this a bit more, but this would actually be a checking account specifically for these expenses. You know, moment to moment, just by looking at your banking app, how much money is available. And I was just reading some super interesting research that says, well, I should say on this bucket, we're not using credit cards. So the research that I read was making me sort of make a connection here that when people who have in their personality trait to spend more compulsively, to act more impulsively, when that's part of their personality trait, they typically do that with their finances and other areas of life. But in finances, if those people do not use credit cards, the data says the impulsivity in spending goes away, which I thought was so interesting. And even for folks who don't have that as a personality trait, I think that's something to think about. So we're pre-funding this bucket, I guess is the point I'm making, using debit and cash only, so we have super real-time information. So money from the control bucket pays for, again, all the regular stuff we spend money on, but these things do typically vary in cost. It includes groceries, gas, dining out, recreation. Other things, if you do them regularly, happy hours, parking, lattes, maybe Uber or Lyft. The total amount you pay for each item can vary, but on the whole, we're setting one fixed amount. And just before we go on to the dynamic bucket, I wanted to remind you that I do have a special offer for everyone on the call today. So I hope you can stay through to the end of the presentation. And we will probably wrap up before 1 hour. Deciding on what we'd like to purchase in the future, using the money from the dynamic bucket, as I said, this is really the fun part. Not only will we be sure to set aside something for a cushion for unexpected financial challenges, which gives us a feeling of security, but we can also allocate money to reach goals we've always dreamed of accomplishment, just like the ones you wrote down a few moments ago. And this is where I spend a lot of time with my clients, helping them to identify goals, dreams, priorities, and guide them in setting up their cash flow structure to support them in reaching those goals. So here we might have things like a wide range of things, really, depending on the needs of and wants of each individual person. Usually emergency fund. Retirement savings counts as this bucket, so that might be your 401k or some other vehicle. Healthcare savings could be another one. A lot of people are using HSA accounts. Some of the money also allocated to needs for the future that you don't necessarily know when, but you know for sure they will happen, like car repair, home improvement. Also education funding is another one. And then we also allocate to wants that we have. So one that people often forget is holiday expenses, birthday gifts. And even like just thinking about this time of year, often people are doing more entertaining, buying more food, buying hostess gifts. So sort of thinking ahead and setting that money aside as well should be part of this plan. Of course, vacation, charitable giving, other dreams that you have identified. So now that we understand what types of expenses each bucket of money will pay for, let's discuss how do the buckets work together. Amount of money needed for your static bucket will directly affect what's available for control and dynamic. This scenario with the large static bucket and very small control and dynamic could represent the financial state of a student just entering the workforce after graduating from college. This person probably has large student loans to pay off, which would be in the static bucket, and is starting out at a lower salary. So a big chunk of expenses are fixed and there's not as much left over for other lifestyle choices. How much money you spend weekly, the money in your control bucket, also affects how much is left over for dynamic. And I think this is a place where many of my clients relate that to the extent there's any sort of impulsive spending, it happens in this control bucket area often. Like that's an area that can easily grow without really noticing extra takeout or eating out or just things that sort of come up that aren't sort of not intentional spending. So this scenario here could represent someone who lives a lifestyle outside of their means. They have high monthly bills and also spend large amounts of money during the week, large relative to their income, on dining out, entertainment, personal care. Because this is outside their means, there's little to none left over for future needs and wants. That's no fun. It's important also to keep in mind any new large expenses that were not saved for ahead of time in the dynamic account will be added to your static bucket in the form of debt, right? If you don't save ahead, then you make a purchase, right? It'll be with debt. Money from the control bucket or for the dynamic bucket will need to transfer over to the static bucket in order to cover the new expense. What this means is that any new debt will result in less available for your weekly spending and funding future needs and wants. And conversely, I don't have a nice slide for this, but it's true, of course, the other way around. To the extent it can be sort of a positive cycle, to the extent that fixed expenses, you're paying off debt and reducing your fixed expenses, that money can then flow to your future needs and wants. And to the extent you're able to manage your control bucket, the yellow one there in the middle, right, that also then feeds into the future needs and wants. To simplify your cash flow and help you easily monitor where your money's going, you can set up your bank accounts to function like these buckets, and here's what it would look like. Your household income would go directly into your static bucket. This bucket usually consists of a checking account, and typically when I help my clients with this process, we're just using their existing checking account here. So this part doesn't really change. You still have your basic bill paying checking account where your income's already coming in. Maybe you have direct deposit, that stays the same. And then all your fixed bills are still paid out of here. Right? That's not really a change for most people. But what's different, as soon as your income comes into the static bucket, certain amounts can be automatically transferred out to fill your control bucket and to fund your dynamic bucket. Your control bucket will consist of a debit account. Could be one account or could be multiple accounts, one for each family member who's participating in this system. So that could be two spouses, two partners, could include some older kids, with allowances, accounts of their own, and we're filling these accounts up once a week, filling it up and drawing it down every week. And we'll make sure this is enough to pay for the variable weekly expenses. And the way this typically works is you just kind of estimate and then trial and error. And as you use the system, what I have noticed for myself and my clients is that you start to sort of feel how this feels in your real life. You might find things that you realize you could really reduce that amount and have more money to fund another important bucket with a goal that you are highly motivated to achieve. Maybe something that you were thinking about when we first started looking at the wheel of life. So the control bucket is going to be, again, a checking account with debit card. So again, you're only going to use debit or cash there. And this is one of the biggest sort of pushback I get from people who are getting started with this program is that means we're losing out on points on our credit card. And I would just say try it and see if there's no real point in earning a bunch of points of benefits on your credit card if in the end you're not achieving your most important, cherished financial goals. So to the extent this process gives you the information that you need in a real-time way that helps you make better choices in alignment with your own motivations and your own intentions, then it's really not worth using the credit card. And you can still use credit card for anything in the other two buckets. So that's one. I'm curious if anybody has any comments. I'll check the comment box in just a minute. But if you have any thoughts on that or more questions, I often get, that's often an area where I get more questions, more need for clarity. But that, I think, is really the heart of the plan, is knowing that part of your spending is intentional. Okay. So finally, dynamic bucket. This is typically savings accounts. And if you're using an HSA, that would be one of the accounts. If you're using a 401k, that would be that would be part of your system, right? That's also getting funded typically out of your paycheck. And then you're setting up automatic transfers. So going from your static to your control on a weekly basis, and then static to dynamic. Typically, we do that on a monthly basis. So it's all automated once you set it up. That part's fairly straightforward. And what this can really do, the first step system, help you simplify your cash flow and make everything automatic. So all you really need to think about on a regular basis is withdrawing your weekly amount of cash and spending it how you'd like. Or, you can use debit and just keep track of your balance on your banking app, on your phone, on your smartphone. It's also fun and exciting to sit back and watch each of your dynamic accounts grow. And just to know you have money set aside. I mean, I've had, a lot of clients starting this system up and really finding that highly motivating to see the account build up. Say it's for a down payment for a house, that's a big one. Just to know that you're moving towards that big goal, and that every chance you have, you're looking for ways to maximize what you can push towards that goal. And the other benefits you can expect are an understanding of where your financial resources are allocated at all times and in real time, which you just really cannot get from other bookkeeping tools. This is really forward-looking and not backwards-looking. A framework that helps making daily and long-term decisions much easier, a way to communicate and manage household money with your family, and a way to prepare for the expected and unexpected of life's events. And then the process of figuring out what your plan will look like gives you an opportunity to really clarify your priorities and set a path towards reaching your goals. And I think this is so, like, in financial planning, we do all this work, both we advisors and our clients, creating goals, creating a nice plan. But for most people a year out, do they know if they're achieving their plan? I would say mostly not. And this is a way where people can really take control of their plan and know that they're executing on it, that they're really making progress. This really connects the planning and goal setting process to day-to-day real life. So one thing, people often relate this to budgeting, and I think it's actually quite different. So looking at the differences, besides being a system that fits more personality types, there's other benefits that emerge. So in budgeting, we look at transactions that we previously made and compare them to our pre-planned budget. Whereas in first step, we look forward and create a spending plan to follow each week and each month. When we compare past transactions to our pre-planned budget, we focus on what went wrong. In contrast with first step, creating a spending plan to follow allows us to choose what we want now and what our priorities are ahead of time, making it easier to resist impulse buys and overspending. And I think that's key, really. Like, if you don't have real-time data, it's so easy just to know. Like, most people, at least people that I work with mostly, have enough. And it's not a problem to do the extra thing or buy the extra thing. They know they're going to be able to pay off their credit card, for example. But if you know real time what the trade-off is between that extra thing that was not planned and other intentional goals that you have set, it's much easier to make the intentional choice. And you might in the moment decide, actually, this goal is more important, and you make the choice. But it is intentional and it is informed. In traditional budgeting, the main focus becomes correcting mistakes versus the main focus in first step being following the path you have created to reach your goals. Budgeting often leads to clients feeling deprived and constricted. But with cash flow management, we create room for more choices and freedom when making daily decisions. And as far as maintenance, the traditional budgeting system requires constant tracking of transactions in, for example, Quicken or envelopes, another online tool, which is good. Those are both good systems, but take a lot of maintenance. Even in Mint, for example, super easy, but things don't get categorized properly. And if you really want to look back and see what you did, you need to do some work to get good data. Whereas first step creates a system of accounts that work together automatically. So there's no real follow-up work for using it. There might need to be tweaks. If you get a bonus, what do you do with it? If you get a raise, what do you do with it? If you're contemplating one person is going to stop working for a while, what do you do? Or going to part-time? Like, you need to adjust the overall system and make different choices and priorities. But once you implement that new set of data, again, the system continues to work automatically. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground today. I'm just going to quickly check, actually, before I jump in here. Let's see. I don't see questions, but sure happy to answer any if you type them in. So we covered a lot of ground today. I have available these complimentary consultations to do. So this will be a more one-to-one and more in-depth discovery process with me. So looking at where you are now and detail your priority life goals, we can look then at where are the gaps and how can I support you in closing those gaps. And those can be scheduled on my website, listed here on this link tamarinfinancial.com is my website, /get started, or there's a get started button and there's a get started tab. Not hard to see once you log in or once you click on my website. So you can reach me there. You can reach me by my email that's listed here. That's also on my website. And I'm happy to talk more with folks. Happy to have that consultation with you. And thanks again for joining us today. I'm going to do one more quick check of the question box. And I don't see any. So I hope that means I was super clear. I look forward to hearing from anyone who's interested to learn more. And I wish you all happy holidays and have a fabulous weekend. Thanks again for joining me. Bye-bye.